How's it going? Welcome to this new episode. Today we'll learn about two cases involving experiences of Argentine Republic police officers. We know that they have very strange experiences, and they're rarely known because they're not really allowed to talk about them. And today, thanks to them sharing their experiences with the channel, we're going to hear two unique testimonies. You can send me your story to the WhatsApp number that's on the screen right now. It doesn't matter how many you have. It doesn't matter how long it is. You can add photos, videos, or anything else that complements your story to make it as complete as possible. Then, if your story is selected and I have any questions, I'll be reaching out to you. And I ask you to stay until the end, because I'll also tell you how to participate in the next giveaway for an exclusive channel t-shirt. Let's not waste any more time and let's get started with this new episode right now. I'll share some experiences from my time as a police officer in the federal capital. There are a lot of stories in the force, most of which are never told outside the closest circle of colleagues. But the reality is that things happen that go beyond logic and even beyond what you could imagine.
In 2010, maybe 2009, what was then the capital was very unsettled. There were a lot of occupations, a lot of land takeovers. At that time, I was in a force based in the capital, which no longer exists. I prefer not to be too specific.
The takeover of Indo-Americano Park is getting more and more violent and out of control. This Friday saw new incidents and another person is already dead.
You can't grasp it from behind the desk. You have to be there. Well, the thing is that they sent us to different assignments and we were in a riot squad group with helmets and shields, ready. Whenever we went to start our shift, we would put all our things in a van. And well, the destination was Plaza de Mayo because it was a strategic point, not only to guard the government house, but also to get on the highway, which is so close to there. From there, we had connections everywhere, especially in the south. At that time, the Indo-Americano Park situation and frequent land occupations in Soldati and Lugano occurred. We often visited there. Occupation of the National School. Right across the street, there was a bar, there was a corner that was also completely occupied, but it had businesses. There was a kiosk, a bar, and some other smaller shops. And next to it, there was a parking lot that's still there to this day. Well, that's where the paranormal things happened. We didn't have a place to rest because there were quiet nights, and the next day we had extra shifts. So if possible, we needed to get some sleep since we had to work elsewhere the next day. At the bank, train, or any extra shift you had.
What you're about to hear took place during the occupation of the Colegio Nacional de Buenos Aires. When assigned to certain places, we often requested parking spots. Since we usually worked 12-hour shifts from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. if it was calm, we rested in the parking lots. Floors, although always ready to go out if necessary. This place was where some of these experiences happened, but it was even more intense in the parking lot of the Palacio Rayo. And it left more than one of us, those of us who were in that parking lot those nights, surprised, on alert, and also scared. In fact, many security guards who worked in this very place quit. They couldn't handle the things that happened, mainly during the night, although I heard that things happened during the day too. And this doesn't surprise me, because the floors are in shadows or in permanent darkness if the lights are turned off, which is normal when the place isn't being used. The first night in this parking lot was pretty normal, or maybe we didn't notice anything because we were alert in a different way, but the following nights were definitely different. There were several of us there, and the first thing I could mention is the noises. They were incredible. You could hear them in different areas of this ground, mainly where there was darkness. It was something practically classic and didn't make any logical sense. That is to say, none of us were there, nor was the person who usually stayed at the entrance. We checked everything thoroughly and found nothing and no one, yet these noises kept happening occasionally. They could be whispers, bangs, or something being dragged. It was common to feel like someone hit you from behind, as if they bumped into you, but when you turned around, you wouldn't find anything or anyone. Although maybe the strangest thing, and what still gives me chills to this day, was a person. I call it that because that's what it sounded like, walking through the parking lot while whistling a melody that none of us had ever heard in our lives. We all heard it, but no one could ever see him. It was incredible to feel the footsteps passing close to you, no more than about 2 meters away, and the whistle that would simply fade away, getting lost in one of the areas. And look, I know very well that it sounds totally impossible, but I'm telling you this because there were many of us who witnessed it, and I'm sure that beyond us, as police officers, there are more people. Maybe someone even knows why this happens, and since when? The thing is, in those first moments when we noticed all these anomalies, we checked every corner of this second basement. And what we found might be a clue, although it didn't give us any answers. In one of the corners, we found an entrance that connected to a rather narrow hallway, which in turn ended in an old tunnel. And from there, precisely, is where the loudest noises could be heard, as well as the shadows that wandered everywhere. Surely, most people know that throughout the San Telmo area, Plaza de Mayo, and the surrounding areas, there are tunnels. There are many tunnels that were used in the past. In fact, a large part of them are somehow connected to the Casa Rosada, because their purpose was, among other things, to provide the president and high-ranking officials with a quick escape route in case of an event. But unfortunately, we couldn't find out where it ended. This tunnel had been closed off for many years from what we saw, maybe for security reasons or to preserve sites of historical interest. But to sum up, we didn't know where it went or what its purpose was. What we did rule out is that anyone could come or go through that place, thinking it might be a prankster. Something I thought at that moment is that you never really know what happened, what's their story, because, honestly, dozens of deaths could have happened for different reasons, and some of these souls could be manifesting themselves perpetually in that place. Some things were so recurrent that they even started to be seen as normal, but you never really get used to it. For example, whenever I slept, I had vivid dreams, where I would wake up in that same place and perceive the different entities that inhabited the underground. Everything was so vivid and confusing that it made you afraid, not knowing if it was real or just a dream, something created by your mind. But also, as I already told you, things happened while you were awake and on duty. Everyone on the team, including me, we saw a little girl running in the entrance area and also in both basements. Always from a distance, so you couldn't really tell her age, but judging by her height and appearance, she couldn't have been more than 8 years old. It was something incredible and also a little sad. Normally, it would be impossible for a minor to be in that place at 2 in the morning, but just to be sure, we confirmed it with the manager. He had already seen her on several occasions, but he tried not to get involved with her, since he had no idea what her intentions were. Some people say that the spirits of children don't exist, that they're actually dark entities trying to get attention, but the truth is, I don't know if that's really the case.
Well, things like that made some of us not want to go anymore, which made it impossible. Not sleeping, no, since there was nowhere to sleep, that's why only a few stayed in the van stretched out. There was always someone who stayed awake to watch over those who were sleeping, it's logical. And well, then we were half and half, and after that we had to end up looking for another place. Many things have happened and some have been explored. They've even reached the 3rd floor, which is all new now, right? They've renovated everything. But surely the people who work there must have stories about that place. The Palacio Rayo is always for some trip because now I'm using the apps. I'm at Juicio where I told you I was. I go to that corner, I don't know why, every 1 or 2 years. The other day, well, I was in Zona Sur and some lady, a lawyer, told me that, bueno, I wasn't really paying attention, but yes, Alcina and Piedras where Palacio Rayo is, on the corner where Itagua used to be. Everything looks good now, they fixed it all, right? But back then at dawn, even Plaza de Mayo was dark, very eerie, very eerie. And over time I had this problem. I was in my uncle's taxi and I started passing by that corner. And one time I went to pick up, it was already the Palacio Rayo. 2 or 3 years later, I went to pick up someone who worked there. He asked me, do I need to take a few boxes to Puerto Madero? Wow, that's crazy. I told him I used to sleep here long ago and things happened. It seemed like there were ghosts. Kind of like the guy opened his eyes like saying, how does this guy know? The thing is, I realized that the guy changed, like I had told him something I knew and he was surprised, like really surprised.
As I said, I often ended up in the area, and even though only a few people know about the paranormal events that happened there, I know very well that each one of them keeps every single thing that happened with terror. My question is, does all of this still manifest even today? My name is Alejandra, and I've served as a Buenos Aires Police Department officer for 31 years. And I would like to share with everyone some experiences I've had that left a mark on me and taught me something. There are things we can't control, even many things we can't see, but they're there. When I was starting out, I was offered some extra work in a place that few people are interested in, none other than the cemetery in the city of La Plata. Honestly, I didn't like it, but I had to do it. I worked extra hours without much choice. I admit that at that moment I wasn't scared. Yes, maybe it was shocking, because it's a place that makes me feel sad and brings you down. But while I was there, I witnessed something that completely changed my thoughts, and everything I just mentioned became secondary.
My first night was a Friday night, the night when every Friday and Tuesday there was always a round, because people, gangs, always used to sneak in, do their business. And well, we were there to make sure those kinds of people didn't get in or steal other things.
That night, the time for the patrol came, we were at a security post and we went out. 3 of us walked through the cemetery with flashlights, making sure nothing bad was happening. About 15 minutes later, more or less, I was the one walking at the very back. And I see something very, very strange pass by our side. It was like a kind of veil or white mist. I'm not sure how to explain it. It wasn't quite smoke or fabric. I was frozen in that place watching this, but I didn't want to say anything. Why? Because I didn't want them to make fun of me. If I said I saw a possible ghost on one of my first nights, it probably wouldn't be the best start. Yet, for me, it was both surprising and relieving. Practically seconds later, one of my co-workers, who was also on his first night, turned around and asked us if we had seen that. And he said it while pointing his flashlight toward that particular area where, interestingly, whatever it was had already disappeared. Meanwhile, he also started walking in that direction. Immediately, the other guy confirmed he saw it, and then I did too. At least I knew no one would think I was crazy.
Well, the thing is that the veil disappeared toward the side of the niches. We went to look for it because there are niches there, above, on the green floor, up to the ground. We never found anything. We finished making the rounds. We went back to our post, to our booth that we had. And since it was around September, I woke up early. So once it was daylight, I felt more confident. While my co-workers were busy, one was resting and the other was working on the guard logbook. I see a person standing in front of a grave. Then I walk slowly and look at the man. He was wearing a gray overcoat and a little hat. He didn't catch my attention at all. I greet him, good morning, sir," and I keep walking.
I took a little walk and went back to the guard post with my colleagues, and then a dramatic moment happened. While we were having some mate, I mentioned to one of the guys, the one who had been working there for a while, that something caught my attention. How early the cemetery opened, all because of that man I ran into. He was shocked. The first thing he told me was that the cemetery only opened at 8 and that no one but us should be inside. I was sure I had seen this man greet him. He even responded to me. So right then we went out and went to where I supposedly saw him. And here, even though it might seem like something out of a movie or a horror novel, what happened to me was something I had heard about many times and maybe wouldn't have believed if I hadn't experienced it myself. We got to the exact spot and this man wasn't there. But that was maybe logical. Maybe he went to another part of the cemetery and we just couldn't find him. The thing is, as I was looking all around, something really caught my attention. It was like a magnet. One cross had a photo, and interestingly, it was the same person as in the picture. It was that man I greeted just a few minutes earlier, and he had disappeared. That was the first and last day I ever covered a night shift in this cemetery. In fact, I didn't even go back to collect my pay for that day's work, and even though nothing harmed me, I felt vulnerable. I realized that while some entities are benevolent, many more are likely not, and I had no intention of risking any kind of danger for just a few extra hours. I also worked nearly 30 years on various shifts at the National Registry of Persons in La Plata at 1st and 60th Street, a place with many stories, but specifically what I want to mention today are those things that have no explanation, at least for me. I remember that the comment you always heard among co-workers and employees was that in certain places you could hear footsteps or voices of people who literally weren't there, either because there was no one there or because everything happened in areas that were locked. It turns out that I started doing night shifts on Saturdays until Sunday morning, and that's when I confirmed that all of this was real.
We had a room where we, the police staff, could stay. The revolving doors of the same building were locked from the inside with a latch. At that time, they didn't have a key. What was happening? I would lock the door with the latch, lock myself in the room we had for the police staff, and I would hear footsteps under the door. I would go out and never see anything. I would walk around the building and find nothing. But every Saturday night when I stayed, on Sunday when my replacement arrived, the revolving doors were without the latch.
My co-worker, on one occasion while he was resting, felt something next to him, and when he turned around, he found something that terrified him. He saw for just a second a person standing there, staring at him, and then they disappeared. There was absolutely no one else in the room. But as the weeks went by and we saw that all of this kept happening systematically, we started to get used to these anomalies. And we practically didn't pay attention to the noises, the shadows, or anything else that appeared, which, luckily, was never aggressive.
I stopped working Saturday nights and they switched me to daytime. I started work at 3 in the afternoon until 11 at night. One night, since I already knew the building from top to bottom, I was going floor by floor, turning off the lights. I turn everything off, lock up the building, I'm leaving. And from the sidewalk, I mean going down the steps to the sidewalk. I had a motorcycle. I get on the motorcycle and I see on the 4th floor, the big windows facing 1st Street, a man in a white shirt leaning against the window. I say I left someone locked in, but how strange. I checked the whole building and no one answered me. I go back, take the elevator up, I don't turn on any lights. I used to move around in the dark because I knew the building well. I go back, I knock on all the offices, the doors were all locked, there was no one in the bathrooms. When should I leave again? I wondered if it was just a reflection. I leave again, I close the main doors of the building, I get back on my motorcycle and I see this image again of the man on the 4th floor of a house wearing a white shirt. I was so scared that day that I didn't go back to check, and from that day on I switched to working at the registry, doing extra shifts during the day.
Thank you very much for making it to the end. I hope you enjoyed these 2 stories. And now I'm going to tell you how to participate in this new giveaway, which is actually very simple. First, you have to follow me, leave a like and a comment with your opinion about what you thought of these 2 stories. Also, provide an email so I can contact you if you win. That's it, nothing more. It's very simple. You can leave 1 or at most 2 comments. Pay attention to that because only a maximum of 2 comments will be considered. This is a very important rule, that's all. So that's it. I wish all of you the best of luck. I'm signing off, see you in a few days, and now I'm sending a big hug to all of you. Bye.